The alien queen doubted humans, until she saw one fight. Deathworld legends: the sky above Krylos burned with strange colors, green and violet streaking across the horizon. The atmosphere was thick, heavy, and almost alive, humming faintly as if the planet itself was aware of every living creature struggling to survive. Most who came here never lasted more than a few hours. The air was toxic to many species, storms could rise in minutes, and enormous predators stalked from the shadows. Even some of the strongest alien soldiers had been broken here. Krylos was a death world. Yet rumors had reached the alien queen, rumors of a human who had not only survived but thrived. She had heard stories from traders, scouts, and even spies who had been sent and never returned. A single human, alone on Krylos, living in a world designed to kill. The queen had laughed when she first heard it. Humans were fragile, small, weak, soft. No species could endure Krylos without the protection of technology or companions, and yet this human had. Curiosity pricked at her. Pride and doubt clashed within her regal mind. Could it be true? Could a human survive here? She needed to see for herself. Her ship descended through the thick, swirling atmosphere, moving silently through the toxic clouds. It was designed to blend with the environment, shimmering with the colors of Krylos so even the sharpest-eyed predator might overlook it. From her high throne within the vessel, the queen watched the planet below. Trees twisted in impossible shapes, their bark glowing faintly in the strange light. Rivers bubbled with acidic water, and creatures larger than most starships moved with lethal grace. And there he was, the human. He was crouched on a rocky ledge, surveying a valley below. His clothing was simple, patched and worn, but it did not hinder him. A crude spear was clutched in his hand, a piece of carved metal tipped with sharpened stone. He moved with a careful grace, every step deliberate, every movement precise. The queen studied him, waiting for a mistake. She expected weakness, a falter, a moment where nature would prove humans were nothing but fragile creatures. Instead, she saw strength. The human's eyes scanned the valley. He noticed the shadows first, a massive predator stalking him from below. Its hide was thick, scales shining in the odd light, claws as long as his arm. Most species would have panicked. Most would have fled, screamed, or simply become prey. But he didn't. He studied the predator carefully, crouched lower, and whispered under his breath, words the queen could not hear. His hand moved to the ground, tracing patterns in the soil, sensing the vibrations of the creature's movements. He was calculating, waiting, watching. The predator lunged suddenly, and the human reacted faster than anything the queen had expected. He rolled to the side, grabbed a rock, and hurled it with perfect aim, striking the creature's eye. It roared and staggered, but it wasn't dead. The human darted between trees, leading it into a trap he had made without even touching it, spikes hidden under leaves, sharpened logs balanced to fall. When the predator struck, it fell into the trap with a thundering crash. The human stood still for a moment, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. He had survived. He had outsmarted one of Krylos's deadliest predators with nothing but his mind, his instincts, and a few simple tools. The queen's prideful skepticism faltered. She had expected fear. She had expected weakness. She had expected death. But instead, she saw brilliance, resilience, and courage. Yet she did not reveal herself, not yet. Humans were unpredictable. She needed to study him more to understand what made this fragile species endure where others had perished. As she watched, the human moved deeper into the jungle. Each step was careful but confident. He avoided the glowing plants that could burn through flesh, navigated treacherous terrain, and listened for the faintest sounds of danger. Even the wind seemed to obey him, or at least to warn him of the dangers it carried. The queen activated small drones to follow him from above. Tiny, nearly invisible, they recorded every moment of his journey. She watched as he crafted makeshift tools from sticks and stones, as he repaired his worn clothing with threads scavenged from his environment. Each action was deliberate, precise, and intelligent. Every step he took was survival, but it was more than survival. There was a spark in him, something beyond mere instinct. He moved into a narrow canyon next. The walls were sharp and uneven, and the ground was treacherous. A sudden landslide of jagged rock and debris crashed down toward him, the sound deafening. But he did not falter. Using his spear as a lever, he pushed against a loose boulder, redirecting the falling stones, and ran through the opening safely. The queen leaned forward, curiosity turning to admiration. This human did not rely on technology, armor, or allies. He relied on himself, his mind, his strength, and his courage. She had underestimated him. She had dismissed humans as weak, unworthy of notice, yet here he was, conquering a planet that had claimed countless lives. Night fell on Krylos, the skies darkening with violet clouds streaked by lightning. The human had made a small camp using fire and stones, crafting a shelter from fallen branches. Even here in the heart of danger, he was careful. Every tool had a purpose. Every action was thought through. Even when he slept, he positioned himself to detect the slightest threat, muscles coiled like a predator's. The queen studied him, fascinated. How could such a fragile species, so small, so delicate compared to the might of her empire, survive here? What was it about humans that made them endure where others failed? Suddenly, a scream pierced the night. A creature, larger and faster than any the queen had observed, leapt from the darkness. The human awoke immediately, eyes sharp, muscles tensing. He grabbed his spear, not as a weapon, but as a tool to manipulate his environment. Branches fell, rocks were rolled into position, and traps activated with perfect timing. The creature struck again and again, but each time the human anticipated its moves, adapting, countering, surviving. The queen watched silently, almost holding her breath. She could have intervened, but she wanted to see the human's true abilities. When the predator finally retreated, the human stood, chest heaving, eyes burning with determination. He had not only survived, he had mastered his environment. He was more than a survivor, he was a force. For the first time, the queen felt something she had never felt for humans: respect. But respect was not enough. She needed to know the limits of this species. Was he an anomaly, or was this what all humans could be if pushed to their extremes? She sent more drones, observing his every movement. Over the next days, she saw him hunt, evade, and survive. He crafted weapons from the dead creatures he found, improvised armor from tree bark and bones, and moved through the deadliest areas of Krylos with unshakable focus. Each day he grew stronger, more cunning, and more daring. Yet the queen also noticed something else, something that set this human apart from other creatures of the galaxy. He cared. He helped small, struggling creatures when he could, sometimes risking his own safety. He did not kill indiscriminately. He was not cruel or callous. Even in the heart of a death world, he had compassion. This fascinated the queen more than his strength. In her empire, most species survived by domination, by fear, by killing without thought. But this human combined strength with intelligence and morality. He fought not only to survive, but to protect, to endure with honor. The queen realized that this human was not just surviving Krylos, he was defying it. And in doing so, he defied her expectations, the prejudices of her empire, and everything she had ever believed about humans. As she observed him moving through the dense jungle, she made a decision. She would descend. She would reveal herself, but not yet. First, she would study him more closely, see how he reacted to challenges she would set. If he truly was as remarkable as he seemed, she would need to prepare for the consequences. Humans could no longer be underestimated. The human paused in the jungle, sensing something. His eyes flicked toward the trees, muscles tensing. He did not see the queen yet, but he felt the presence of an intelligence far greater than any predator he had encountered. He stood still, listening, waiting, and the queen smiled. She had come to Krylos to see a weak species prove itself. Instead, she found a legend in the making. The human did not yet know the galaxy was watching. The queen had doubts about humans, yes, but those doubts were beginning to crumble. She had witnessed courage, ingenuity, and morality. She had seen a creature who survived against impossible odds and did so with honor. This human was no ordinary survivor. He was something else entirely, something the queen had never expected. And the galaxy would soon take notice. The jungle of Krylos shifted and breathed around the human as if it were alive, a constant test of his senses. Every step could be his last. Even after days of survival, he knew he could not let his guard down. He had already faced predators that could swallow him whole and navigated traps and terrain that had ended the lives of countless others. Yet he pressed forward, driven by instinct and something more, a stubborn refusal to surrender to the planet that tried to claim him. Above, the alien queen watched. She had not revealed herself yet, though her curiosity burned like a star in the darkness. Every move the human made was a lesson. She studied him as she might study a rare creature of her empire, noting his decisions, his movements, his reactions. But unlike a normal predator or prey, this human was adaptable, intelligent, and courageous beyond anything she had expected. The human paused at the edge of a clearing. His eyes scanned the area carefully, noting subtle changes in the terrain, the way the shadows fell. He crouched low, listening. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of chittering and claws scraping stones signaled another predator. It was enormous, with mottled skin that blended perfectly with the forest. Its limbs were long, spindly, and tipped with claws sharp enough to tear through metal. Most creatures would flee. Most species would hide or fall into panic. But the human did neither. He moved slowly, deliberately, using the natural cover around him. His hands brushed aside hanging vines and fallen branches, testing their weight and stability. Then, with precision, he set a series of traps using stones and logs. He did not need a weapon to survive. He used the environment itself. The predator struck suddenly. It came from above, dropping from the trees like a shadow of death. The human rolled, landing on uneven ground, barely keeping his balance. He reached for one of his traps, triggered it, and a series of logs toppled onto the creature, slowing it down. He struck it with a sharpened branch, piercing its thick hide, and the beast retreated with a roar that shook the ground. The queen observed silently, her eyes narrowing. She had expected him to falter. She had expected him to fail. But he had not only survived, he had mastered his environment with skill that rivaled any trained soldier in her empire. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of something new, respect. Not the simple acknowledgement of survival, but true recognition of a mind and body working in harmony, a creature defying nature itself. The human did not notice the queen yet, but he sensed the presence of intelligence around him. His senses were sharp, honed by weeks of survival. He could feel the subtle shift in the air, the faint hum that suggested something watched him. It made him tense, but he did not panic. Instead, he moved carefully, alert but not fearful. As night fell, he began to build a temporary shelter. His hands moved quickly, efficiently, weaving branches together, arranging stones to create fire and setting traps around the perimeter. He knew Krylos would not give him a moment of peace. No species could rest completely here. The air was thick with danger, and predators were never far away. Above, the queen activated more drones, sending them closer to the human. She wanted a better view, a detailed understanding of his abilities. She noted his patience, his resourcefulness, and his courage. But there was something else, something the drones could not capture, his moral code. During his preparation, a small creature, weak and injured, stumbled into his camp. The human froze for a moment, weighing the risk. Krylos was unforgiving, and a distraction could cost him his life. But he acted. He helped the creature, wrapping it in a piece of cloth and placing it safely inside a protected area of his shelter. He risked nothing that could not be managed, yet he showed compassion, a choice most species on Krylos would never make. The queen studied this closely. Survival was one thing, but the human's courage was combined with intelligence and compassion. She had underestimated humans. Deeply, days passed. The human hunted, traveled, and avoided predators with remarkable skill. He climbed cliffs that should have been impossible to scale, crossed rivers that burned with chemical toxins, and evaded creatures that had been bred to hunt in packs. Each challenge was met not with brute force alone, but with strategy, improvisation, and instinct. The queen grew restless. Observation was not enough. She wanted to see how he would react to something impossible, something no human had a right to survive. She decided to intervene subtly, testing his skills and adaptability. She created a series of environmental challenges. Trees were felled in his path, predators were subtly guided toward him, and the terrain was altered to create near-impossible obstacles. She watched closely as he navigated them all. He adapted, he planned, and he survived. Each trial was more dangerous than the last, but he continued to overcome them, showing ingenuity that surprised even the queen. The most impressive moment came when a massive predator, larger than any he had encountered before, ambushed him in a narrow canyon. Its claws slashed the walls, sending rocks tumbling toward him. The human assessed the situation instantly, using his spear to wedge stones in unstable positions, redirecting the falling rocks and creating a small barrier between him and the creature. He lured it into a trap he had crafted earlier, forcing it into a pit covered with loose rocks. It roared in frustration but could not escape. The queen's admiration deepened. She had expected luck, raw instinct, maybe even brute strength. What she saw instead was calculated skill, rapid decision-making, and resilience. The human was not just surviving, he was mastering Krylos, but the queen was not done. She wanted to see how he would react to her presence directly. She began to hover closer, cloaked by the environment, making her presence slightly more noticeable without revealing herself fully. The human sensed it almost immediately. His eyes flicked toward the shadows, muscles tensing. He did not know what it was. No creature he had encountered could move like that. No predator could vanish and reappear with such subtlety. But he reacted quickly. He altered his route, set new traps, and moved silently, blending into the jungle as he had learned to do. The queen was impressed. His instincts were sharp, honed by necessity, yet enhanced by intelligence. He adapted not only to natural threats, but to unseen ones, responding to a presence he could not identify with skill and courage. Night fell once more, and the human made camp in a safer area he had identified. The queen watched as he prepared fire and shelter with meticulous care. Even in exhaustion, his movements were efficient, precise, and careful. He lay down to rest, but not fully. One eye remained alert, scanning the environment. She could see the signs of fatigue, of hunger, and yet he remained unbroken. The human embodied the qualities her empire often lacked: endurance, intelligence, and moral courage. He was fragile in size, weak in appearance, and yet stronger than most creatures she had commanded in her armies. Suddenly, he heard a faint rustling. Without hesitation, he grabbed his spear and moved toward the sound, discovering a small alien trapped under a fallen branch. The creature struggled, frightened, but he lifted the branch carefully, freeing it. The queen had never expected such deliberate kindness in a human on a death world. Most species would have ignored it. Most would have left it to die. But he had acted, risking himself for another. The queen leaned forward, her curiosity now mixed with respect. She began to understand that humans were not simply survivors. They were adaptable, intelligent, and capable of compassion even under extreme conditions. As dawn broke, the human set out again, moving through the jungle with precision and care. He hunted efficiently, ate sparingly, and avoided unnecessary confrontations. The queen watched him, realizing that she was witnessing something extraordinary. A human was thriving where most life would perish, and he was doing so not through advanced technology or allies, but through sheer resourcefulness, courage, and moral strength. The queen made a decision. She would descend to Krylos herself, not to capture, not to test further, but to see the human in direct confrontation. She wanted to understand fully the limits of this species, to witness the human's true abilities and character. Yet she would not reveal herself immediately. Humans were unpredictable. She needed to approach carefully, gradually, observing how he responded to her increasing presence. The game was far from over, and the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. The human paused on a ridge, looking out over the dense jungle below. He could feel something, a presence that was not a predator, not a natural force. It was intelligence, keen and observing. He tensed but did not panic. He had survived Krylos by relying on his instincts, his mind, and his courage. Whatever this new challenge was, he would face it as he had faced everything else, head-on, without fear and with determination. The queen watched him, hidden above the jungle canopy, and allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in her life, she doubted her judgment of humans. This fragile creature was unlike anything she had imagined. He was clever, resourceful, and brave. He was a survivor, a thinker, and a protector. And she would soon learn if he could be something even greater. The human did not yet know it, but his life was about to change. The alien queen, the ruler of countless worlds, had taken notice. And Krylos, the death world, would bear witness to a legend in the making. The human moved cautiously through the dense jungle, every sense alert. Krylos was merciless, and he knew it. Every sound, every shadow, every shift in the wind could mean danger. He had survived countless threats already, yet each day brought new challenges. The death world seemed determined to test him endlessly. But he had learned to adapt, to anticipate, to turn the environment itself into his ally. Above him, the alien queen observed from her hidden vessel. She had been watching for days now, her curiosity growing into something more profound: admiration. The human had endured the dangers of Krylos with skill, intelligence, and courage, proving her assumptions about humans utterly wrong. Yet she was not satisfied. She wanted to see how far he could go. How would he react under pressure that was beyond natural limits? The queen decided to create a series of tests, subtle but lethal. She guided predators to intercept him, shifted terrain to collapse underfoot, and engineered storms that forced him to improvise. Her intent was not to kill him outright, but to challenge him, to see how he adapted, and to witness the true extent of human ingenuity. The first test came in the form of a sudden river surge. A swollen river, fed by Krylos's unpredictable storms, roared through the valley, sweeping away trees and rocks. The human approached its edge and paused. Most species would panic at such a force of nature, but he did not. He studied the current, the shape of the riverbed, and the scattered debris. Using fallen branches, he created a makeshift bridge, reinforcing it with rocks and vines he had collected. He tested each step, adjusting as needed, moving slowly and deliberately. When the current surged again, he rolled with it, using his body and balance to counter the river's pull, crossing safely while the debris tumbled past him. The queen watched, impressed. This was more than survival instinct. This was strategy, resourcefulness, and quick thinking. Most species would have drowned or been swept away. The human thrived. Next, she guided a predator, a massive creature with thick armored hide and crushing jaws, toward him. It moved silently, stalking him like a shadow of death. The human sensed it immediately. His eyes narrowed, his body coiled. He scanned the terrain for advantage and found a natural choke point between two cliffs. He lured the predator into it, using rocks to create obstacles, sharp sticks to pierce the ground, and branches to trip the creature. When it lunged, he dodged with precise timing, striking with a sharpened spear to slow it down. Hours passed, and he continued to outsmart the predator, finally forcing it to retreat into the jungle. The queen's respect deepened. His strength lay not only in his physical ability, but in his mind, his ability to anticipate, adapt, and overcome. But Krylos had more trials in store. As he moved through the dense forest, the air shifted. Strange spores floated on the breeze, glowing faintly, and some creatures that had been passive until now became aggressive. The human did not hesitate. He used his environment again, building traps, using the terrain to his advantage, and avoiding poison with careful observation and clever improvisation. At one point, a pack of small but vicious creatures cornered him in a clearing. He was outnumbered and the terrain offered little room to maneuver, but he remained calm. He noticed the predators' patterns, their coordination, their weaknesses. With quick thinking, he lured them into a pitfall he had dug earlier, toppling rocks to seal their escape. Then, using sticks and vines, he defended himself until the creatures gave up and retreated. The queen marveled at him. He was doing more than surviving. He was adapting to every threat with skill and composure. And yet she still saw in him something more than a fighter, a protector. Even in the heart of danger, he paused to assist small, vulnerable creatures, never harming unless absolutely necessary. The human pressed on. Krylos's dangers became increasingly complex. Lightning storms struck without warning, igniting fires that forced him to reroute through treacherous terrain. Massive predators stalked silently from above, from the sides, from below. He used every skill he had honed, tracking, observation, calculation, and improvisation, to survive. Each time he faced a threat, he learned, adapted, and improved. The queen took careful note. She realized that human adaptability went beyond instinct. It was intelligence, creativity, and resilience intertwined. Humans were not merely survivors, they were innovators under pressure. Then she introduced a challenge more direct. She altered the terrain, creating a narrow canyon lined with jagged rock and unstable cliffs. At its entrance, she placed a massive predator with claws like hammers and teeth that could crush steel. The human approached cautiously. He recognized the danger immediately. Most creatures would retreat, most humans might panic, but he did neither. He assessed the canyon, observing the predator's movements and the unstable rocks above. He used his spear to shift small boulders, creating a controlled landslide that slowed the predator. He ran through the canyon, ducking, rolling, and using every natural advantage he could find. When the predator lunged, he sidestepped, using its momentum to send it crashing into a jagged wall. He did not strike to kill, he struck to survive and control the encounter. The queen, hidden above the canyon, felt a thrill of recognition. This human's mind and body worked together in harmony. He was clever, resourceful, and courageous in ways her empire rarely saw. She could see why he had survived so long on Krylos. It was not luck, it was skill, intelligence, and determination. But she was not done testing him. She created a subtle moral trial. She guided a smaller creature, injured and struggling, into his path, while at the same time bringing another predator close to him. The human froze for a moment, calculating. He could have ignored the weaker creature, saving himself. Most species would have, but he did not. He helped the injured creature to a safer spot, using vines and branches to lift it from harm. Then he turned to face the predator, using the terrain and his traps to defend both himself and the vulnerable animal. He succeeded, outmaneuvering the predator without harm to the smaller creature. The queen's respect turned to astonishment. This human combined strength, intelligence, and moral courage. He fought not only to survive, but to protect. He stood for something beyond himself, even in the harshest, deadliest world imaginable. As night fell, he built a secure camp in a hidden valley. He crafted a fire, arranged his traps, and rested lightly, ever alert. The queen observed him preparing, noting the care he took in every action. Every stone, branch, and tool was deliberate, every movement calculated. He was efficient, patient, and precise. She realized then that humans were more than her empire had ever imagined. They were capable of ingenuity under pressure, moral courage under threat, and adaptability beyond expectation. This one human was a living example. He had endured challenges no other creature could face, and he had done so with honor. Yet the queen knew the greatest test had not yet come. She had been content to watch, to guide threats subtly, and to observe. But now she wanted direct interaction. She wanted to see how the human would respond to intelligence like her own, to authority and presence far beyond anything he had encountered. She decided to approach, slowly, cloaked by the shadows, making her presence subtly known. The human sensed it immediately. He paused, scanning the trees, the shadows, the wind. His instincts were sharp. He had survived Krylos by understanding threats before they arrived, and now he could feel one approaching, something intelligent, deliberate, and observing. He did not panic. He did not flee. Instead, he adjusted his movements, blending with the jungle, using the terrain and the environment to his advantage. He was calm, precise, and ready. The queen felt a thrill she had never experienced in her life. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but this one was remarkable. He did not fear her presence. He did not act rashly. He adapted, using intelligence, instinct, and courage in perfect harmony. The human moved through the jungle with confidence, despite sensing the queen watching him. He hunted, crafted, and survived with skill and care. The queen realized that he was not merely a survivor. He was a master of his environment, able to navigate impossible challenges and adapt to threats no species could overcome. And she understood something else. Humans were not just strong or clever. They were capable of moral courage even in situations where most species would act only for themselves. This human risked his life to protect the weak, to show compassion, even on a world that would reward nothing but brutality and cunning. The queen's doubts about humans, about their value, strength, and potential, began to crumble. She had underestimated them, as had many across the galaxy. She made a decision. The next step would not be observation. The next step would be confrontation. She would reveal herself, and the human would face intelligence, authority, and power unlike anything he had known. The human, sensing the presence that hovered just beyond his perception, did not falter. He did not panic. He was ready. He had survived Krylos this far. He would survive what came next. The queen smiled, hidden above the treetops. She had expected weakness, but she had found something extraordinary. And the legend of this human, the Deathworld survivor, was only beginning. The jungle of Krylos whispered with unseen dangers, yet the human moved through it as if the world itself obeyed him. Every step was cautious but confident. Every movement was precise, honed by weeks of survival. He had learned the patterns of predators, the behavior of the winds, the weaknesses of the terrain. But now he sensed something new, a presence unlike any predator or force of nature. Something intelligent, deliberate, and aware. He paused, eyes scanning the shadows, muscles tensing. The air felt heavier, charged with power. This presence was watching him closely, almost like it wanted him to make a mistake. But he did not panic. He had survived Krylos for weeks by reading signs, predicting threats, and acting with calm intelligence. Whatever this was, he would face it like he faced everything else, with courage and careful planning. Above the treetops, the alien queen watched, cloaked by her advanced technology. For days she had observed him, guiding predators, altering terrain, and creating challenges that no human should have survived. And yet he had met them all, mastering every danger with ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. She had expected him to falter, to fail, but he had not. Each victory, each clever solution had deepened her admiration. Now she decided the time had come. She would reveal herself, not fully, but enough to see how he reacted to an intelligence as formidable as hers. Slowly, she lowered her vessel, shimmering with camouflage but leaving faint traces of movement that the human could sense. The wind shifted around him, carrying subtle hints of alien technology. The human crouched low, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the treetops. He had survived predators that were larger, faster, and stronger than him. He had navigated traps, rivers, and deadly terrain. But this was different. This presence did not belong to Krylos. It was deliberate, intelligent, observing, and it was focused on him. He advanced cautiously, testing the shadows, listening to the faint hum of unseen machinery. Then from the corner of his eye he saw it, a flicker of motion, impossible to miss. A figure descended from the canopy, light shimmering across its body, humanoid yet clearly alien. Tall, regal, and commanding, with eyes that glowed faintly in the low light. The human froze, but only for a moment. His mind raced, assessing the situation. He could run, hide, or fight, but none seemed necessary yet. The figure before him exuded power, but no immediate threat. Instead, it observed him with something akin to curiosity. The alien queen stepped forward, fully visible now, her presence radiating authority. "Human," she said, her voice melodic but firm, carrying across the clearing. "I have watched you. I have seen how you survive. I have seen how you fight. Tell me, why are you still alive?" The human lowered slightly, keeping his spear ready, yet he did not back away. He met her gaze steadily. "I survive because I have to," he said simply. "Because if I don't, I die. I survive because I adapt, because I think, because I refuse to give up." The queen tilted her head, intrigued. Most species would tremble, flee, or attack out of fear. Yet he stood his ground, speaking boldly, without arrogance, without panic. She had expected fear, but instead she saw courage, intelligence guided by willpower. "You are not like the others," she said slowly. "Most species would have fallen long ago. Most humans are weak, fragile, unfit for Krylos, yet you—" Her eyes studied him, scanning his every movement. "You defy every expectation. Why?" The human paused, glancing around the jungle. "I don't know why some survive and others don't. I just know I have to. Every day I make choices. Every action matters. I protect what I can, I adapt, and I fight when I must. That's all I know." The queen considered this. She had underestimated humans. Her empire had always seen them as insignificant, fragile, and easily overlooked. And yet this one had survived where countless others had perished. More than survived, he had mastered Krylos in ways she had never imagined. "Your courage is remarkable," she said, her tone softening slightly. "But survival is only part of strength. What of loyalty, morality, and judgment? Do you act only for yourself, or do you have other reasons?" The human looked down at the ground, then back at her. "I act for myself when I must, but I protect others when I can. I won't harm what doesn't threaten me, and I'll risk my life for those who cannot defend themselves. That's how I live." The queen studied him carefully. Most creatures on Krylos acted purely on instinct, guided by fear or hunger. This human combined intelligence, courage, and morality, a combination rare even among the most advanced species of her empire. She felt a spark of respect that bordered on admiration. "You are a remarkable creature," she said. "And yet I wonder, will you continue to survive if I make the challenge greater, if I test you with dangers beyond anything you have faced?" The human straightened, eyes steady. "I will face whatever comes. I always do. It's not about winning or losing. It's about surviving, learning, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That's all I can do." The queen considered this for a long moment. She had expected fear, submission, or arrogance. Instead, she found calm determination, courage, and insight. This human did not act recklessly. He calculated, adapted, and acted with purpose. "Very well," she said finally. "Then you shall face greater trials. But know this, I do not seek to kill you. I seek to understand you. And perhaps to see if you are worthy of greater purpose." The human nodded slowly, though he did not fully understand her words. He had survived Krylos, yes, but he had never faced a being like her. He had fought predators, navigated deadly terrain, and survived storms and poison. Now he faced an intelligence far beyond anything he had known, testing not just his body but his mind. The queen raised her hand slightly, and the jungle shifted subtly. Trees bent, branches moved, and shadows danced across the ground. She was testing him already, observing his reaction. The human moved cautiously, analyzing the changes, adjusting his route, and avoiding danger with calm precision. Hours passed as the queen continued her subtle tests. She created minor obstacles, altered paths, and guided smaller predators into his route. Each time he adapted, improvising new solutions and surviving. The queen's admiration deepened. His strength was not merely physical, it was intelligence, strategy, and courage in perfect balance. Finally, she decided to escalate further. She summoned a massive predator, larger and stronger than any he had faced, and released it near him. The human noticed immediately, eyes narrowing. He did not panic. He did not flee. Instead, he assessed the terrain, identified weak points, and prepared to use every advantage available. The predator lunged, and the human moved with precision, dodging, rolling, and striking at vulnerable points. He used the terrain as a weapon, channeling the predator's momentum against itself. When the predator finally retreated, he was unscathed, breathing heavily but victorious. The queen felt a thrill of recognition. He had survived trials that would have destroyed most creatures, combining intelligence, strength, and morality. She realized that humans were not simply survivors, they were innovators under pressure, capable of extraordinary feats when challenged. "You are extraordinary," she said aloud, stepping closer. The human turned, seeing her fully for the first time. Her presence was overwhelming, regal and powerful, yet she observed him with genuine curiosity rather than threat. "I do what I must," he replied simply, eyes unwavering. "I survive, I protect, I adapt. That's all I can do." The queen studied him in silence, then smiled faintly. "You have proven yourself beyond doubt. You are clever, brave, and moral. Few in the galaxy possess such qualities." The human blinked, not fully understanding, yet sensing the weight of her words. He had survived Krylos against all odds, and now he stood before the ruler of countless worlds, alive, unbroken, and respected. "You have earned my attention," the queen continued. "I will offer you a choice. You may continue to survive alone on this death world, or you may join me in a greater purpose. A purpose that may challenge you further than anything Krylos has offered. Will you accept?" The human considered her words carefully. He had survived by relying on himself, but he had also learned the value of choice, courage, and responsibility. He knew that joining her would be dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than anything he had faced. Yet it was also an opportunity to make a difference, to protect others on a scale he had never imagined. "I will join you," he said finally, his voice steady. "Not out of loyalty, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is my choice." The queen nodded, a faint smile crossing her face. She had doubted humans, yes, but this one had proven her wrong in every way. He had survived, adapted, fought, and shown moral courage beyond expectation. He was no longer merely a human, he was a force the galaxy would notice. And Krylos, the Death World, had witnessed the rise of a legend. The sun rose over Krylos, casting jagged shadows across the twisted jungle. The human moved through the terrain with the confidence of someone who had mastered it, yet his mind was focused on the task ahead. The alien queen had given him a mission unlike any he had faced before, to venture into the heart of the planet's most dangerous region, the Shattered Abyss, and recover an artifact that could save countless lives across her empire. It was a mission designed to test intelligence, courage, and morality in equal measure. He paused at the edge of a cliff overlooking the abyss. Below, the terrain plunged into jagged canyons filled with deadly creatures and unstable ground. The wind howled with a strange, almost musical resonance, carrying the scent of predators and poison. Most species would have fled at the sight of such a challenge. Most humans would have died trying, but he did not falter. He had survived Krylos this long by relying on intelligence, instinct, and moral courage. He would not fail now. The queen watched him from above, cloaked in her vessel. She had guided him here but not directly interfered. She wanted to see the human's true capabilities under extreme pressure, to witness the full measure of his courage and ingenuity. She felt a mix of pride and curiosity. This human had already defied her expectations. Now she hoped he would rise to greatness. The human began his descent into the abyss. Each step was deliberate, testing the stability of rocks, the grip of the soil, the weight of debris. He used vines and branches as supports, crafting tools from natural materials, improvising whenever the terrain threatened to overwhelm him. He moved silently, avoiding creatures that prowled the shadows. Each predator he encountered he outwitted rather than fought directly, using traps, diversions, and his keen observation to survive. Hours passed, and the environment grew more treacherous. Toxic gases seeped from cracks in the ground, and jagged rocks shifted underfoot. Yet he pressed on, unwavering. He paused briefly to survey the terrain, noticing patterns in the landscape, subtle signs of danger, and routes that offered safety. He understood Krylos not as a death world, but as a puzzle, and he had learned to solve it. Suddenly, a massive predator emerged from the shadows, a creature the size of a starship with armored hide and eyes that glowed faintly. Its roar echoed across the abyss, shaking loose stones and dust. Most creatures would have panicked. Most humans would have fled. But he did not. He assessed the situation quickly. The creature moved slowly but deliberately, its weight crushing the ground beneath it. He noticed its patterns, its blind spots, and the weaknesses in the terrain. Using a combination of traps he had set earlier and natural features, he lured the predator into a narrow canyon. There, he used rocks and debris to pin it momentarily, buying time to continue his journey. He did not kill the creature. He had no desire to destroy what he could outsmart. The queen observed silently, her admiration deepening. She had expected fear or recklessness. Instead, he displayed intelligence, patience, and strategy. This was more than survival. It was mastery. The human pressed further into the abyss, where the terrain became almost impossible to navigate. Sharp rocks jutted out like blades, toxic fumes rose from cracks in the ground, and predators lurked in every shadow. Yet he adapted, using tools he created from the environment, crafting ropes and bridges from vines and branches, and setting traps with precision. He moved efficiently, conserving energy, avoiding unnecessary risks. Along the way, he discovered a wounded alien creature trapped under a pile of rocks. The human paused, weighing the risk. Most species would have ignored it, focusing solely on survival. But he did not. He carefully lifted the rocks, freeing the creature. It looked at him with gratitude before disappearing into the shadows. He had risked his own safety for another, showing compassion even in the heart of danger. Finally, he reached the chamber where the artifact was kept. It was an ancient device, glowing faintly with energy, suspended above a pit filled with jagged rocks. The artifact pulsed as if alive, reacting to his presence. He approached carefully, studying the mechanism and the traps that surrounded it. One wrong step could trigger a collapse, release toxic gas, or awaken predators. He moved slowly, deliberately, using tools he had crafted to secure the ground, disarm traps, and navigate the chamber safely. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the patterns, predicting potential dangers, and improvising solutions. Step by step, he inched closer to the artifact, relying on intelligence, courage, and careful calculation rather than brute strength. When he finally reached it, he examined it carefully. It was more complex than he had anticipated, but his mind adapted, understanding the mechanisms and devising a method to extract it safely. He lifted the artifact, securing it without triggering any of the deadly defenses. The queen watched with silent awe. She had expected him to struggle, to make mistakes, perhaps even to fail. Instead, he had succeeded, using ingenuity, courage, and moral judgment to achieve what no other species could. He had not only survived Krylos, but had conquered it intellectually and morally. As he began his ascent back through the abyss, he faced new challenges: predators returning, unstable terrain, and toxic fumes rising unpredictably. Yet he moved with confidence, using traps and clever tactics to avoid danger, adapting constantly to the shifting threats. Each obstacle was met with calm precision, patience, and skill. Finally, he emerged from the abyss, artifact in hand, unscathed and triumphant. The queen descended to greet him, her vessel landing silently nearby. She stepped forward, regal and imposing, yet her expression held genuine respect. "You have done what no other being could," she said, her voice carrying over the clearing. "You have survived Krylos, mastered its dangers, and retrieved the artifact with intelligence, courage, and moral judgment. You are extraordinary." The human nodded, exhausted but steady. "I did what I had to do. I survived, adapted, and protected where I could." "That's all I can do?" The queen studied him carefully, her doubts about humanity completely dissolved. She realized that humans were not fragile, weak, or insignificant. They were capable of brilliance, courage, and morality in ways her empire had never expected. You have proven that humans are more than we ever imagined, she said. You are clever, brave, and capable of moral courage. You have earned my respect and the respect of the galaxy. The human felt a strange mixture of pride and humility. He had survived Krylos, not for glory or recognition, but because he had no choice. He had acted according to his principles, protecting others when possible, adapting constantly, and facing danger with courage. Yet now, the galaxy itself had taken notice. The Queen extended a hand. You have a choice. You may continue to survive alone, or you may join me and use your abilities to protect others across the stars. Will you accept? The human considered the offer. He had survived alone, yes, but he had learned the value of responsibility, of courage used to help others, of intelligence applied to greater purpose. He understood that his choices could have consequences far beyond Krylos, that his actions could save lives on a scale he had never imagined. I will join you, he said, voice steady. Not for power, not for glory, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is my choice. The Queen smiled, a faint glimmer of admiration in her eyes. She had doubted humans, yes, but this one had shattered every expectation. He had survived, adapted, fought, and shown moral courage beyond measure. He was no longer just a human. He was a force to be reckoned with, a legend in the making. Together, they returned to her vessel. Krylos faded beneath them, a planet of death and danger that had tested him to the limits. Yet he had emerged victorious, unbroken, and respected. The Queen watched him, knowing that the galaxy had never seen a human like this before. News of his survival and courage spread across the stars. Other species began to take notice, realizing that humans were not weak, fragile, or insignificant. They were adaptable, intelligent, courageous, and moral. And this human, the Deathworld legend, was proof of what humanity could achieve when pushed to its limits. The Queen regarded him with admiration and respect. She had doubted humans, yes, but now she knew better. They were not to be underestimated. They were not to be ignored. They were capable of greatness, of leadership, of bravery that could shape the fate of worlds. The human, once a lone survivor on a death world, now carried the promise of humanity across the galaxy. His courage, intelligence, and moral strength had earned him not only survival but legend. He had faced impossible odds, conquered a planet that should have claimed him, and emerged as a symbol of what humans could achieve. And the alien Queen, once skeptical, now saw humanity in a new light. They were clever, courageous, and morally strong. They could survive, adapt, and protect in ways no one had imagined. Krylos faded beneath them as the Queen's vessel ascended. The human gazed out across the stars, knowing that his journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more dangers, more opportunities to prove humanity's worth. And he would face them all with courage, intelligence, and the same unwavering moral strength that had carried him through Krylos. The galaxy would remember this day. The human had become a legend, and humanity had earned its place among the stars.